Hello and welcome back to coverage here at Grand Prix Denver. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe in the booth with Ben Stark, and we have one for the ages here. Two brothers facing off in the semifinals of a Grand Prix. They top-8'd the last GP together, and now they find themselves way down the line. They are two of three people playing this deck who tested together and built the deck. Teamer Energy. Brian Browndoin is on the other side of the bracket.
Hey, you know what they're not doing together, it looks like, though? Oh, nope, they are. Corey shows his hand to Brad and Mulligan's also.
Okay.
So I saw Brad shuffling, so I was like, well, Brad's mulliganing, and I guess Corey's keeping. But Corey just revealed his hand and mulliganed it. Of course, you can reveal your hand even if you're not brothers here because you have deckless in the top four.
That's right.
But he shows Brad, hey, I had a close one. You know, would you mold this? Let me get some advice later. Not right now, maybe, but before the finals, let me get your opinion on whether you mold this or not.
Something else kind of unique happened here at this GP. Somebody rooted for Brad Nelson to win a match in which they had to play against Brad Nelson the next round. That is not normally the case. If you're at a standard GP and Brad's playing and he's playing against anybody else, you'd rather have the other person win.
Well,
but Corey Baumeister, of course, was sitting here after he won his round rooting for Brad.
What if Brad's your brother?
Yeah, then that's the exception. Brad's taking a look at that opening six, it looks like.
Yeah, I don't know if it has a lot of lands. I see one. I see an Aether Hub. Might also have an Attune.
Yeah, he does have an Attune as well.
So he's going to keep. You're not going to mulligan from 6 to 5 with two lands. An Aether Hub and an Attune is effectively a second land.
Let's see if Corey has a keeper on his side of the table.
Uh-oh. I think I only see one land in Corey's hand.
Uh-oh.
I mean, I don't know that even with a scry, that hand looks expensive. I can't really see all 6 cards perfectly. I keep plenty of one-landers on the draw on 6, if that is one. Just depends. I think it's 2 Rogue Refiners, a Warlord Virtuoso. Okay, so maybe it's not that expensive. So Corey going to keep, and, you know, hopefully with the scry and the draw steps, he can find lands.
He did find one off the top. He had to scry to the bottom, so that freshly drawn mountain could be a savior for him there. Brad Nelson with that Aether Hub is going to fire off an Attune with Aether, putting him at, ooh, double Attune?
So
he's going to go get a forest. He's just shortcutting?
So interesting here. Brad did not Attune turn 1 because presumably he scried the second Attune to the top, and he couldn't afford to shuffle his deck turn 1. The reason he would have cast Attune turn 1. He wasn't trying to save the energy from Hub or something like that. He just knew he had an Attune on top, and that's a land, and he needs land, so he just couldn't cast his Attune turn 1.
Oh, that's crazy. All right, well, off we go.
The scry mulligan's interesting like that.
Wow. There's a Long Toss Cub, one of the best threats from the Teamer Energy deck here in the early stages.
And key, after double Attune, that means it can't be harnessed right now, it can't be abraded, it basically can't be killed.
Okay, well, a Rogue Refiner could help force the issue there from Corey, though. Being tapped out is going to make that difficult. Oh, and a Magma Spray from Brad Nelson.
I think we are going to see a big Long Tusk Cub here.
Yeah. Yeah, he just cashed in 6 energy to attack for 5, gets 2 of it back thanks to hitting. This game could be over very quickly in favor of Brad.
So that Cub right now has the potential to be a 6/6, and Corey has the potential to harness it for 5. So Corey needs a little help. If he even laid an Aether Hub, he would be able to harness away the Cub, and then this is a very winnable game. However, if that Cub grows any bigger, it's kind of going to run amok on this board. I mean, you can only kill a Cub of a certain size. It looks like Corey did find the Harness Lightning, and he got 2 more energy off the Rogue Refiner. So it's going to be interesting to see whether Corey is able to harness away that Cub next turn or whether that Cub ends up too big for Corey to be able to kill.
Brad's doing math. Corey's tapped out, so.
Yeah, so Brad has a forest I can see. I think I saw a Bristling Hydra in his hand, although it might have been Corey's when they're playing the same deck. Oh, okay, so I see what happened here. So Brad going to 5 energy means the Cub is effectively a 7/7. So Corey, if he chumps the Cub, he can harness it away. But if he blocks the Servant and Brad gets the 2 more energy, the Cub will be out of harness range.
So he has to chump block here, and that's just to deal with the Cub. That says nothing about the other 2 creatures on the battlefield,
right,
which are going to be a handful as well.
Right, and Brad's down to 2 cards in hand, so if Corey can stabilize this board, he's in the game, but the problem is he wants to trade with the Servant, and then kill the cub. He doesn't want to have to chump block the cub and take this hit from the servant, but he kind of has to do that. So Corey finds himself with his back to the wall here.
Yeah, very early. He's got a couple of Sky Sovereigns in hand. He has a grip of cards, but...
And he is only an energy or two short, so if he was to block the servant, he could peel an Attune or an Aether Hub, and then he'd be able to kill the cub still. So now Brad with an interesting choice whether he wants to deal damage now and grow the cub, because it's not actually going to change whether it can die, or save that energy, because he also has a Bristling Hydra out. I think we'll see him pump it once, maybe twice, because he'll still have 3 energy left after he gets the 2 new energy from the cub.
Yeah.
The key number here is 3, because that's how much energy it takes to give the Bristling Hydra +1/+1 and hexproof.
And that's exactly what he did. He used up 4 of it to put 2 counters on the cub. It's now a 7/7, and he left himself with 3 energy in the tank for the Hydra, just as you described, Ben.
So this is going to be a very tough game for Corey, but it looks a little worse than it is. Corey does have a lot of energy. So if Corey can play a Whirler Virtuoso or something and make chump blockers for the cub, he does have the ability to kind of chump it for a little while. He has a harness in hand, and he has a lot more power and spells in his hand than Brad does. However, Brad has a massive board advantage, so he's going to try and close this game out as quickly as he can.
Let's see if Brad has the tools he needs to get the job done. 7 energy for Corey represents 2 Thopters, and of course the Whirler Virtuoso itself can also block if needed.
It really depends on these next couple turns. It looks like Brad drew a Servant, and maybe he has a Whirler Virtuoso in hand, so that's a lot of energy.
Well, in they come.
So he didn't want to reveal the rest of his hand here pre-combat because he doesn't need more energy than this. The Bristling Hydra, he can only... The only way Corey could kill it would be if he actually blocked it with the Whirler Virtuoso and both Thopters, and that would mean not blocking the cub, and then he would just die.
And he's dead, yeah.
Right. So Brad plays the Servant because he needs to make a little bit more energy. Well, I guess he didn't even really need to do that, I don't think, to be honest. But with 3 energy, the cub was still lethal. Yeah, I don't even know why Brad played the Servant pre-combat, but I don't think it matters much. Basically, the Bristling Hydra is not threatening lethal and can't be triple blocked because the cub is lethal. So Corey's just going to take the hit from the Hydra, and he's going to chump the cub because he has to.
He finds a land off the top, and it was an Aether Hub as well.
I'm kind of unsure about what's going on. Did Brad play a land that turn?
No.
I don't think so. And if his hand is land virtuoso, like I think it is, I'm not sure why he wouldn't just play it. There are no sweepers in this deck.
He would need an island or a blue producing land to do that.
Yeah, it's hard to see his hand perfectly. I thought it might have been an Aether Hub and a Virtuoso, but I could definitely be wrong. I didn't really get a crystal clear look at his hand. More interestingly, what does Corey have? Because Corey's the one with all the spells in hand. Okay, it may be a Botanical Sanctum, not an Aether Hub. So maybe Brad didn't have the option to cast the Whirler Virtuoso there. So Corey has a Harness Lightning. Corey has a Whirler Virtuoso. It looks like he has at least 1, maybe 2 Skyship Sovereigns.
He has 2.
So he's going to have to chump block the cub, but he can do that. He's got a lot of energy, and he's got Whirler Virtuosos. He has the Harness Lightning. If he can ever use that to finish the cub, that would be amazing for him. And he is up to 8 energy. So he could fire off the harness on the cub. And he could kill it if he wants to. He does still need to deal with the rest of the board, but I don't actually think this game is as bad for Corey as it looks. I think Brad is probably a small favorite. Is that a Glorybringer, not a land? It's so hard to see.
It is really hard to see, yeah.
Brad's like teasing us. We can
He
just barely see them, but not crystal clear at all.
He's holding it just perfect, so he can't quite see it.
So,
Brad, you're killing us.
Yeah, so if Brad does have Glorybringer, the game, well, no, it's not over. Corey's got chump blockers, but it is a third good threat that's going to attack, exert, take out a blocker, and then have to be chump blocked by a Thopter. And pretty much all of Brad's creatures have to be chump blocked at this point. Brad has a lethal Long Tusk Cub, a lethal Bristling Hydra, and whatever else he can add to the board.
He drew a land for the turn.
So it's probably not a Glorybringer because you'd probably slap that down. It probably was a Whirler Virtuoso, and the other card being a tap land, not a land he could have played on tap. No, he does have a Glorybringer.
You're right, he does.
I don't know why he wouldn't just. Well, I guess he's just mapping out exactly what's going to happen after he exerts.
Yeah.
But I'm fairly certain from Brad's perspective here, he's not going to die on the backswing. So you're definitely just going to cast Glorybringer and attack with all three. I mean, Corey's Cub is a little scary, but not that scary.
Corey says, "You got it. I'm tapped out."
Yeah. He doesn't send the Bristling Hydra. I wonder if that's because the Cub is bigger than the Hydra, potentially? I'm not sure I necessarily completely understand this play. It's probably right if Brad made it. But so he's exerting on the Cub to try and force Corey to have to spend a lot of energy there. And if Corey was to save this Cub, he wouldn't be able to make a chump blocker with the Whirler Virtuoso because he has exactly 8 energy, and then he would die to the Glorybringer. So Corey doesn't have the ability to save this Cub. He must let it die. Now, that being the case, I don't understand why the Bristling Hydra is not attacking since it's bigger than the 2 Whirler Virtuosos. I think this may be a mistake by Brad not sending the Bristling Hydra here. A really nice play by Brad in casting Glorybringer and exerting and targeting Cub, understanding that Corey can't spend 6 energy to make Cub into a 5/5 because that would leave Corey dead on board to the Glorybringer.
Yeah, Corey's going to make a Thopter here to jump in front of the Glorybringer.
Yeah.
And he may even make another one for the Cub. He's trying to manage his energy as closely as possible because of that Harness Lightning in hand. He does have to kill the Cub at some point this game, at least theoretically. Yeah, he's going to go down to 2 energy and make 2 Thopters to go chump.
So I guess Brad didn't want the Bristling Hydra double blocked by the 2 Whirler Virtuosos because it's not really a good trade with a Whirler Virtuoso.
It's a 1-for-1.
Right, and so that was probably his reasoning for not sending, which could easily be correct. The only thing is with all your creatures being lethal, I kind of feel like it's not a bad trade, but ultimately, Bristling Hydra for Whirler Virtuoso isn't a good trade, so that's the reason Brad didn't send it. It didn't really change anything.
Corey's looking at his options. He does still have that Sky Sovereign that he could play this turn, though. The options for what it could kill have really dwindled. He could force Brad to cash in 3 energy or just kill the Servant. Everything else is bigger.
Yeah, I don't think Sky Sovereign's going to be a good play this turn. I think Corey's probably going to have to use Harness Lightning, make energy. With his back to the wall, he's kind of being forced to spend his energy just chump blocking and not dying. But he does have a lot of resources in hand. So if Brad bricks out over these next couple turns and Corey's able to take care of that Glorybringer, maybe then play the Sky Sovereign, maybe get that thing online. As I said, I think that Brad's a favorite in this game, but I think this game might look worse for Corey than it is. Brad is pretty much out of resources. Corey has a handful of cards.
Yeah, 4 cards in hand. You can see them at the top of the screen there for Corey.
So, as we've seen all day, tight play by Brad, realizing that the Bristling Hydra attack didn't really change anything, and that he could kill Corey's Cub, and Corey couldn't save it, and Cub is a very threatening creature. And then Corey right back, having to play his cheap creature and leave Harness up to take care of one of these big threats. It's interesting. He really needs to kill Glorybringer. With it being lethal and having the exert ability, even though he's going to be able to chump it, it's going to pick off a creature every time it attacks, and Corey can't afford to be letting that happen. The problem is Corey also needs to take care of this Bristling Hydra, this Long Tusk Cub. I mean,
so many threats, and they're all lethal.
Yeah, and Brad has that Whirler Virtuoso that we've been looking at for a while. While it's not a super scary card, it does provide 3 energy immediately. And this is the reason that Brad didn't send that Hydra, because the Hydra is scarier now that he has 6+ energy. So he maybe felt like in the long game, the Hydra could do more than trade with a Whirler Virtuoso.
Yeah. With 6 energy in the bank, it could trade for 2 of them.
The Cub, of course, is 100% to attack because it's just giant, way bigger than everything else on the board. And it looks like Brad's in the tank trying to figure out whether or not that Bristling Hydra attack is profitable for him. So I don't know if Corey has more than 1 harness. No, he has 1. He has a harness, he has a Bristling Hydra, and 2 Skyship Sovereigns. So his choices are basically he can harness away the Glorybringer, which is what he really wants to do, but then the Cub still has to be dealt with, chumped a lot. Or he can harness away the Cub. No, he doesn't even have enough energy anymore to harness away the Cub. Okay, so he just chumps the Cub, and he basically has to harness away that Glorybringer in a turn. And then he's going to go into Skyship Sovereign mode, I believe.
So how does this game play out if Corey were to win it?
Corey,
Because we've been concentrating on him not dying for 3 or 4 turns in a row here. What does it look like for Corey to actually turn the corner and win this game?
Well, he turns the corner with Skyship Sovereign. If he's able to pick off a creature without a turn when it's attacking, it doesn't take many turns of that before he has a big advantage.
Okay.
And he has plenty of chump blockers. He can throw things in front of that Cub for a little while. His hand is full of ammunition. He's got a Bristling Hydra. That's another decent blocker, and it gives you 3 energy, which the 3 energy, it could turn into a +1/+1 counter if all you have is a Bristling Hydra, but in this case, it's going to turn into a 1/1 Thopter because of those Whirler Virtuosos, which is a full turn of chump blocking the Cub. The big creatures in this matchup are interesting because they can't really be removed, but you do have the ability to throw a lot in front of them on the ground.
Right. That's kind of the interesting thing about it is that we've had a long tusk Cub that's been bigger than everything else on the board for multiple turns, yet Brad doesn't really have a way to push it through. It's sort of been trading for energy effectively over the last 3 turns.
No, with Brad not really drawing too much more here, I could see Corey winning this game.
God, that'd be incredible.
So Brad goes and makes Thopters now to try and win the game in the air.
Yeah, remember, Corey's at 4.
Right, but he does have a 6/5 flyer out. So Brad lining up blocks. So with Corey at 4, if Brad were to alpha, Corey doesn't have the ability to crew the Sky Sovereign and block with it. The problem is if Brad doesn't alpha and he sends just the 2 Thopters, then Corey would just crew the Sky Sovereign and eat one of the 2 Thopters. So that's why what you see Brad doing is lining up Corey's potential blocks and ignoring the Sky Sovereign. Brad's trying to figure out how bad is it for me on the ground if I make this alpha, because it gets in the 2 damage in the air with the Thopters, which is something very important to Brad on this board. And Corey has to block all the creatures on the ground since the 2 Thopters are hitting him to 2.
Ooh.
So he has to block exactly as Brad lined it up. So
another Bristling Hydra.
That's why you saw it go that way.
Yeah, this one could be slipping away from Corey here.
Well, Corey's going to make some energy this turn, and he has a Magma Spray. So I think this is fairly tight.
There's an Ether Hub.
I believe Corey's at 2 now, not 4, because he took 2 hits. He took 2 points of damage in the air from the 2 Thopters. I'm not sure that Corey can survive the next turn. It's an extremely tight board. If Corey had like another point of life or 2 last turn and would have been able to crew the Sovereign and eat things instead of having to be trading and chumping and getting a little lower.
Yeah, that's how close it was, wasn't it?
Super tight game.
Let's see what Brad finds at the top of his library. Oh. Ronus the Indomitable. Well, that is one way to push through damage.
That's going to do it.
It is a one-of in this deck, but literally any creature that hits Corey at this point can get pumped by Ronus. And that's going to do it. So a great draw step there for Brad Nelson. Again, they only play one of those.
Yeah.
But you can see why that is one of the ways that they can get damage through with a huge long tusk Cub or a Bristling Hydra.
Yeah, and by no means was that a one-outer. I'm not even sure how Corey looked on board if Brad bricked that turn.
No.
But the Ronus made Corey clearly dead.
Right.
So Brad just drew it and slapped it into play immediately because he knew it made Corey clearly dead, and then Corey conceded.
Well, Big Brother wins game number 1. Brad Nelson, one to the good to find himself in the finals of another GP. I'll tell you what, he would love to find himself in the finals, but he does not want to beat Corey. He loves Corey. He protects Corey. He roots for Corey. Like, as much as, the brother rival stuff will happen down the line, in the moment, he's not going to feel good about it.
Listen, Marshall, I know what you're saying, but Corey is not a kid. Corey is a grown man here. He won a Standard Grand Prix 5 months ago. He's in his 3rd Standard Grand Prix top 8 in the past 6 months. Game on. This isn't protecting your little brother on the playground.
I'm telling you, man, it's not how Brad rolls. He loves that guy.
Game on. They're playing a match of magic.
Well, I'll tell you what, Brad's not going to take it easy on him. So that only goes so far.
May the better brother emerge.
And we'll see. 1 or 2 games is going to decide it.
Thank you for clarifying, Andy. Andy let me know that they were playing Teamer Energy.
Yeah,
not
and
Emerge.
Andy.
We don't have Luis for bad puns, so
Andy-
Andy's trying to fill in for him. Is that what's going on?
Andy,
now?
you should put on the sunglasses, man.
Yeah. We've been bad pun free this whole show.
I know. We actually sent Luis out of the state
That was very smart.
just to try to get away from the puns, and it worked.
He went to Gen Con, right?
Yeah, he was in Indianapolis.
So it's interesting. They're sideboarding. So,
Yeah, but they've probably had hours of conversations about sideboarding with this deck, right?
Well, so here's the interesting thing, right? There's probably a way that they sideboard in the dark against opposing Teamer Energy lists. But if they know how each other's sideboarding, then maybe there's some potential leveling. For example, if you know your opponent was taking out Long Tusk Cub,
yeah.
you could theoretically take out a Braid. You probably wouldn't because they know that each other has Skyship Sovereign. But just as an example of the type of sideboard leveling that can go on, in the dark, you would never take out, let's say, something like a Braid because it kills Cub, and that's really important on turn 2, and it's an okay card otherwise. But once you know exactly what your opponent is doing, that really opens the door for leveling, for going, to what beats what they're doing, for going to the next level. So in this case, I don't really know their sideboard plan, and I don't really know if they're thinking like, well, I know what my brother's going to do. Maybe I'll do this thing that's not exactly what I would do in the dark against, a normal Teamer Energy deck. Mm-hmm. But then, they know that each other knows that, so it can get really interesting in spots like this.
I'm really curious what's going through their minds.
When you have deck lists and when you have an idea of what the other person's plan is going to be like, you can get into some really creative sideboarding situations. I've seen matches, best of 5s in Pro Tour Top 8s, where people put a card in for Game 2, took it back out for Game 3, put it back in for Game 4, because, you know what your opponent is doing. You know what they're seeing. You know they have your list. You know they're expecting you to do, the obvious thing, the right thing. And while I do think people also hurt themselves sometimes with fancy play like that, when you really have the deck lists and you really understand everything, there is room for some of that.
I wonder how much of that's going on here. Tell you what, these guys are certainly having a good time enjoying the semifinals to get to play against each other. I mean, whoever ends up winning it, they will be talking about this for a very long time. It is an incredible feat. It doesn't happen that often that family members get to top 8 an event like this together, and to do it in back-to-back tournaments is just unheard of.
Yeah, I mean, they're both incredible players. I've played against Corey. I've played against Brad. We've watched them all weekend. Brad's been playing truly amazing. I mean, I saw him win a game against Jerry, a game against Brad, a BBD. I mean, here, we watch him play virtually perfect every single turn. He doesn't send a Hydra that's lethal. My initial thought is, why didn't he send it? Maybe it's a mistake. A turn later, we understand that it wouldn't have changed anything, and it was probably right to not send it. Basically, Brad has just been playing so incredibly well all throughout this tournament. I'm almost rooting for him just because I think he deserves the championship from all the matches I've covered.
It's funny. He had a game 2 of the quarters where he kind of lost his focus for a little bit. He missed a couple of triggers. He missed a Tireless Tracker trigger. He missed an Oketris Monument trigger that he had stolen. Wow. Yeah, and you could tell he realized it right away, and he was like, I gotta get dialed in. And he did manage to get dialed in, win that game, and then win the last one, get back into Brad Nelson mode. But when I bumped into him on the way over to the semis, he was kicking himself. He was like, I played so bad in that second game. Really gotta dial it back in, and I'll tell you what, he certainly has to against Corey.
Yeah, I was on break for that, and if I didn't see it, it didn't happen.
Oh, is that how that works? Good to know.
Yeah.
All right. But you do believe me that he won the match, right?
Well, I'm sure he won the match because he's here, but what I can't be sure of
there's
is
some evidence that it happened.
I mean, you're saying it on air. You're saying it on air, and it was on camera, so it probably happened. And I'm going to use the word probably. But
all right, yeah.
No, nobody's perfect. Magic's an extremely hard game.
No, totally.
You'll always hear me say, I think that's a mistake. Very rarely, that is definitely a mistake, because ultimately, I make plenty of mistakes. Even as somebody who's been playing the game my whole life in the Hall of Fame, I make plenty of mistakes. Magic is incredibly difficult. That's what makes it such a wonderful game.
All right, well, we're getting ready for game number 2 here of our semifinals in Denver. If you're just joining us, we're happy to have you along. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe in the booth with Ben Stark. And we're in the semifinals. Corey Baumeister versus Brad Nelson. These are brothers, and boy, are they having a fun time with this. This is going to be a memory that they're going to get to cherish for the rest of their lives. Getting to play against each other in a high-level Magic tournament like this in the top 8, in the semis, no no less, although only one will be able to continue.
Yeah, I was going to say one's going to cherish it a lot more than the other, I think.
Yeah. Christmas dinner.
So it looks like a pretty good hand for Brad. I see a couple of lands, looks like a servant, like a clear keep. Corey's hand looks a little more awkward. A Bristling Hydra, double confiscation coup. It might be a really slow hand. It really comes down to the last card or two. Okay.
Forrest, go. They've both kept.
Yeah, Corey has a servant also. That last card I didn't see yet looks like it was a servant, and that makes it a clear keep and a pretty good hand. I mean, the servant might die, but either way you have a 2-drop. So looks like pretty good hands from both of them.
Servant of the Conduit kicks things off for Corey, but it's going to get immediately Magma sprayed.
And I thought Magma Sprays might not even be in this deck post-sideboard. So it shows you what I know.
Yeah, it's still there. There's a Servant of the Conduit for Brad to kind of get him caught back up on mana. No play here from Corey. What does he have?
He has 2 confiscation coups, a Bristling Hydra, and lands, it looks like.
All right. Well, the next few turns are going to be pretty good for him, but this one doesn't look too exciting.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because he's going to fall behind here, but confiscation coup is one of the best cards in the matchup.
Brad is going to play a Rogue Refiner and then play a land and pass. So we're going to see a Bristling Hydra from Corey this turn. He's up to 6 energy as well. So a nice little threat there from Corey Baumeister. And big turn here for Brad. He's going to have access to 5 mana if he has an untapped land. And there's some pretty big fireworks that can happen at the 5 mana slot in this
Yeah, I'm
deck.
not sure that he does have an untapped land. It looks like his own... Oh, he does. He has Aether Hub.
He's got a hub, yeah.
Yeah, so... But it doesn't look like he's casting a 5-drop. It looks like he's casting a Tune to start the turn. So let's see what the rest of his hand is. He's got a Harness. That doesn't look like an effective card right now. With Corey having 6 energy, that means even if if Brad attacked with the Rogue Refiner and Corey blocked with the Bristling Hydra and then spent 3 energy, he would still have 3 energy left to give it hexproof in response to any sort of harness, so that's not going to happen. So Brad just attuning and playing Bristling Hydra this turn because this wasn't really an effective turn to play Skyship Sovereign. He would have dealt 3 to the Bristling Hydra, Corey would have just pumped it, and Corey would have just untapped with a bigger Bristling Hydra and still having 3 energy.
Did he not play the land either? Must be keeping it in hand for Tireless Trackers if he brought that in, or?
Yeah.
We did see a hub in his hand, right?
Well, I think he might have played a land this turn. Corey was on the play, so this was Brad's 4th turn, and Brad has 4 land out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I didn't actually catch it when he put it in play.
It must have been from the attune then.
Right.
That must have been it. All right.
Right, instead of the hub in his hand, he probably just attuned for that mountain or something like that.
Yeah, for the forest. Okay, cool.
Yeah. So Corey's going to be able to attack here. The Hydras are on about equal footing. I don't know if Brad wants to trade Hydras or not. I think he probably does, given he has Sky Sovereign in hand. But he also knows if Corey's attacking, that means Corey doesn't mind trading Hydras. They both have 6 energy. And since Hydra starts one more power than toughness, you can't force Brad to use the second 3 energy. So it's not really possible for Corey to get a blowout, let's say, with an instant speed removal right now. This is simply them trading Hydras if Corey attacks.
Yeah, nobody wants to blink on that, so they're just going to say, okay, fine.
This would be a good turn for Corey to say drop Skyship Sovereign and kill Servant or Rogue Refiner. I don't think he has that. I think if he did and had land 5, he would almost certainly do that. It looks like he plays Cub. His hand is 2 Confiscation Coups, and I don't know what the other card is.
We're back on Brad Nelson here.
Yeah, and we know Brad has Skyship Sovereign. It can't take out that Cub. You can force Corey to spend some energy, but that's not a big deal. There's nothing really better to spend your energy on than a Cub anyway.
So he's going to go for the Harness Lightning here, targeting the Cub.
And that makes sense, because Harness, as we've talked about, trades very favorably with Cub, because if they want to pump it in response, that's 2 energy of theirs for 1 energy of yours. So you're almost always happy to just harness away a Cub, assuming that you have enough energy to do so.
Now, explain to us how this part works, because we have a little bit of a face-off with how much energy to use here, right?
Well, you only have to use the exactly 2 to kill it on resolution.
Yeah, I meant from Corey's side.
If Corey wants to make Brad spend more energy to kill it, he can by spending 2 of his own to make it bigger, but that's a 2-for-1 energy trade. So with energy as a resource, it's going to be pretty rare that you want to spend 2 of yours to make them spend 1 of theirs.
So Brad just gets to resolve the lightning, even gains an energy out of the deal, and gets rid of what can be a really pesky threat, the Long Tusk Cub. It also clears the way for an attack here for Brad.
Yeah, and this game has lined up really well for Brad because he hasn't played any big threats, any really powerful things, and Corey has double Confiscation Coup in hand.
He's going to have to start firing those things off pronto.
Right, and even though Confiscation Coup is fantastic, part of the reason it's only a 2 of is because you don't necessarily want to see multiples in your hand because it's the kind of card you can't control when it's going to be best. You want to have 1 for when your opponent plays some really powerful threat, but if you're facing a board of 2 Servants and a Rogue Refiner, you want to have other stuff to do. That's why when you're building your decks, you don't just say like, well, Confiscation Coup is awesome in the mirror, I'm going to have 4 of it. Because it's the kind of card you really don't want to see multiples of in your hand. You really want to draw exactly 1 of it per game. And now Corey kind of faced with having the Confiscation Coup,
it's
one
awkward,
of these small
huh?
creatures.
Yeah, just like taking an untapped Servant of the Conduit. It's not really what you had in mind when you put it in your deck, but you do what you got to do. In fact, he's not even going to do that. He's just going to take the Rogue Refiner.
Well, he's got plenty of life, so there's no reason really to take a 2-2 over a 3-2.
Okay.
It's cool that the Servant was on tap so it could block, but he doesn't really mind if Brad attacks him here.
Okay. I mean, he's going to take 4 damage.
Yeah, this deck doesn't really have reach, and
Okay.
he's still at 15. So ultimately, you just want the bigger, more powerful card.
Okay.
This is still going to line up pretty well for Brad right now. Now is a good time. He can use that Skyship Sovereign, take out the 3-2, and get in for 4.
Oh, yeah.
The only things he might be thinking about is Corey hasn't done a lot. Maybe Corey has a second Confiscation Coup because, you know, if Brad knows this deck, he knows these matchups, he knows the list, he's well practiced with them, and for Corey to go ahead and have this turn be Confiscation Coup at 3-2, he can't have a lot of options. If Corey had a Glorybringer in hand, he would have cast it. If Corey had a Bristling Hydra in hand, he would have cast it. If Corey had a Skyship Sovereign in hand, he would have cast it. So there's really not that many cards that can be in Corey's hand. So I think that's what Brad might be thinking about. Ultimately, he's still going to go ahead and play it because it's not really that bad for him. If Corey does Confiscation Coup the Sky Sovereign and he doesn't get the 3 damage,
yeah.
Brad gets in another attack, and then Corey has to have a creature to crew it with.
That's going to be the big question here for Corey Baumeister next turn is, do you have something to crew up that Sky Sovereign? Because it looks great here against Brad.
Right. I mean, Brad has this draw step to find anything useful, and a Braid, Glorybringer. Any big card here would be practically not unbeatable, but it would give Brad a very big advantage.
How about Chandra Torch of Defiance?
Well, that's actually not one of the better ones because one attack from the Skyship kills the Chandra.
Either way.
Right, so if Brad goes Chandra plus it and doesn't hit a spell to cast, then if Corey has a creature to crew that Sky Sovereign, it's going to take out a Servant and the Chandra with 1 attack.
Whoa.
So Chandra's not really what Brad wanted to see. Brad wanted to see Confiscation Coup, Glorybringer, Bristling Hydra. But Chandra's kind of dicey.
Okay, well, first things first, attack for 4, knock you down to 7. He's going to play out the Chandra, though.
So I'm not...
He's going to take the risk?
Well, he's plussing it for mana because... Okay.
That makes sense. He has a blocker now.
Right, and that's huge because now he can protect the Chandra from a Sky Sovereign attack. So now Brad's looking really good. If he didn't have that Whirler Virtuoso, he would be in pretty bad shape.
Ooh, but look at this. Is he a mana? No, he has it. So Corey drew his Ronus, or had his Ronus in hand, and he can use that to crew up the Sky Sovereign, right?
Wow, so this game
give it trample?
So this game gets tight again, but Corey's at 7 now, and Corey might die on the backswing.
Yeah.
It's going to be very, very tight. Brad has 12 energy, so that's 4 Thopters he can make. So if Corey takes out a 2-power creature here, and Chandra, he's still going to die. So he needs to have another spell he can play.
Now he does. He drew a Rogue Refiner, but he won't be able to give trample to the Sky Sovereign and play it.
Right, so this should be...
So that would let Brad still chump block and protect Chandra.
Right, and with no sweepers, I would be shocked if Brad just doesn't make infinite Thopters here. I think Brad will just remove all 12 energy and make 4 Thopters because every Thopter is very useful. Corey's at 7. You have a good shot to Xaxes him. Plus, you do want to chump block this Sky Sovereign. So I think the only thing Brad's thinking about is if I don't want to chump block and just want to let the Chandra go or something like that. But I would be shocked if Brad didn't grab all 12 energy here and make 4 Thopters. There's nothing that punishes you for that.
That's exactly what he's doing. Got a snake on a plane here flying over.
And I think he will chump block because, of course, Chandra's more valuable in play than one Thopter. I think he was just double-checking to make sure that it wasn't some kind of exactsies if he let the Chandra go or something. But with Chandra's ability to deal 2 damage, it's going to be more valuable than a Thopter.
I mean, Brad is looking really, really good here, right? Like, Corey cannot use the mana to take down Chandra.
No, when I was talking about Corey being able to beat Chandra, I was not talking about Corey being able to beat Chandra and Whirler Virtuoso. Without the Whirler Virtuoso, Brad couldn't protect the Chandra, and right now Chandra would be dying, and one of the servants would be dying.
Hey, and that does it. Brad Nelson has just won the match 2-0 over his brother Corey Baumeister, and he's going to be the one heading to the finals. Now, have I been updated about the other match yet? I don't think I have. We're going to get an update on that one. We had John Rolfe playing against Brian Brown doing